being a good leader takes a lot of self-discovery, a lot of listening, paying attention to the little things. You have to be willing to take the risk. Whether you're talking about a big career shift or you're talking about a situation at work, I feel like leadership always kind of embodies this risk and protection balance, right? In most things, if you don't take the risk to do the things you're afraid of, then you're not going to reap the rewards of those things.
Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we sit down with executive leaders to explore what leadership really means through the lens of their stories, their wins, their struggles, their vision, and their lessons along the way. I'm Ty Hammond, founder of One Mountain Leadership and creator of the True Leadership Approach, an awareness-based path that helps leaders shift their focus from what to do about their problems to how to grow from them. Whether you're just stepping into leadership or are well-seasoned and at the top of your game, your potential won't be realized following someone else's script, but you can draw insights from their stories and turn it into wisdom by putting it into practice in your own life. Welcome to the True Leadership Podcast, where we explore the essence of leadership beyond tactics and performance by sitting down with executives to hear what matters most to them. I'm your host, Ty Hammond. Today's guest is Shelly Mahon. Shelly is the Vice President of Marketing at Zia Consulting, where she leads brand strategy, demand generation, and go-to-market execution for enterprise content and AI-enabled solutions. With a PhD in human development and family studies, Shelly brings a rare blend of behavioral science and marketing strategy, translating complex technology into clear, human-centered narratives that drive engagement and growth. Her career spans 3 decades across public health, education, and enterprise sectors, all unified by one focus: understanding people deeply to create authentic connection and meaningful results. Outside work, she hosts the Parenting Well podcast and is an avid cyclist and skier. It's my pleasure to have Shelly here with me today. Welcome to the show, Shelly.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I always start here with this first question. Of course, every leader has a beginning. Well, before we get to any position of executive leadership, I'm curious if you'd share, what's an early experience or someone from your early life who really shaped the person and the leader that you are today?
I would say there's 2 people or 2 situations in my early career that really shaped me as a leader. One of them was my undergraduate college advisor, and she was a very important person in my life and has continued to be a mentor. Actually, my entire life, she still is. So that's spanning a very long time. And the thing that made her such a great leader is she really deeply cared about her students. She had an open door policy. You could get her time when you needed it. You could talk to her about anything. She provided a space and an environment that was safe. Big cushy chair in the corner. You could sit in there and talk. I cried to her. I shared deep and personal things with her. And she just was always there to support me in my life and in my learning way outside of college. Counter to that, my very first job out of college, I worked for the sheriff's department, and I drove a bus of 30 guys around to do work crews. Very, very long days. I'm all of 23 years old, driving a school bus with 30 guys that have jail time on the weekend. And the way that the organization, and this is a little bit hard to speak to because it's not just a person, it's structural, it's institutional. But the way the criminal justice system works, the way the organization worked, it was so punitive and so like, this is what we do, this is the consequence. There was no room for listening. There was no room for actually seeing them as human beings. It was just get the job done. I didn't make it very long in that job, and I ended up going back for a master's in prevention science.
First of all, I love those 2, obviously one individual, another story in contrast. Could you, first of all, amazing to have a mentor, and sounds like you really realized the value of that person and kept her along for a while. Incredible value there. Can you speak a little bit to, what are the ways in which that mentor and that experience informs how you show up as a leader today?
Yeah, completely. I would say that I think that being a good leader involves taking a lot of the ego out of it. I think that that's sort of counterintuitive because you think of a leader as someone who like, knows what they're doing and they take charge and things like that. But the number one thing that I recognize is that people's humanness is really important, and that, whether it is running my nonprofit or selling in the world of technology, people want to buy from people they like. People want to engage and share with people they like. Um, they want to feel heard, seen, and listened to. And I think that's really, really important. I would also say that humility is a really important factor to me. I believe that showing your faults, sharing your experiences, being able to be that person that says, you know what, I'm going to help you not make the same mistakes I made is valuable as well. Because a person has a really hard time engaging with someone who comes off as this perfectionist and, I do everything right and therefore you must also. It's growth. It's long-term growth. And so I think, being able to be open and share really made a difference for me. And that's what I didn't have in that second example, right? I was not only not able to see the people I was helping as humans and engage with them in real conversations, but I also wasn't getting that kind of guidance, feedback, um, coaching that I really I craved, I wanted from the people that I worked for at that time in my life. And it was early 20s. It was a very um, fundamental time in my career.
Extremely impressionable time, and what a contrast it sounds like as well to have those two experiences in the dynamics there. Of
Yeah,
course,
for sure.
and I'm curious. It sounds like some of the themes that you've mentioned already. We might hear more throughout the podcast, but of course, this is
Yeah.
called the True Leaders Podcast. We're exploring the essence of what that means to you. So, what is true leadership in your eyes? What makes a true leader to you?
I think that I keep thinking of like verbs that come to my mind. Curiosity. I think it takes curiosity to not only understand people, which I've talked about, but also to understand situations. I tend to fall on the side of entrepreneurial, thinking outside the box, being very innovative. I think it's really important to put people around you that do the things you don't do well, and, that brings that humility in, being able to say, you know what, I'm not the best task driver. I'm not the best person to organize these spreadsheets. But if you want to sit down and brainstorm on a whiteboard, I'm your girl, but being a leader, especially co-leading in an organization, requires having a lot of people around you that can fill in those spots that you don't do well. And so I think that's really important. And I also think compassion and vulnerability, really being able to have compassion for people's situations. We're all living this life and we all have things come up. And um, when you're working with people, and I feel very privileged to be part of a team like this, when you're working with people who they're driven. They're doing the best they can. They're working their tail off to get things done. When they come to you and they have something going on in their life, then a leader is there to jump in and say, you know what, I've got your back on this. If you need to take 3 days, I'm going to take this on for you. And I think that's really important. Not just for you personally, but for the other person.
You're mentioning some things that feel essential to me as well: vulnerability, humility, curiosity. What are the ways that you've developed that or cultivated that as a
Mm,
leader? I often I think of there's myriad articles out there that say be humble, be
yeah.
compassionate, just do those being things. But what does it look like in your life and in your career to actually cultivate those qualities in yourself?
Yeah, sure. One of the things I believe strongly in is having relationships at work that go far beyond getting the job done. I think getting to know someone, doing things outside of work, really understanding their life, not just who they are and what they do for the job, but what their life is like. And one of the ways it shows up in the actual like core of what we do at the current job I'm in at Zia Consulting is we have what we call a coaching program that each person is coached for 30 minutes, including myself. I have a coach. That person cannot be somebody that you directly report to, and you separate that coaching session by 10 minutes on you personally, what's going on in your life, what do you need, 10 minutes on what's going on for you in your job, and 10 minutes on where you want to go. And that doesn't have to be at work. It can be in any part of your life. It's a really beautiful way to not just kind of intercept conflicts or things that could turn into huge problems at work, but it's also a nice way to just be with someone when they're dealing with things. And even if it's like their supervisor, they can talk. My people that I coach can say to me, you know, I'm having a really hard time with the way the CEO is structuring this, or the way I had a conversation with somebody, or whatever. It can be anything. And it's my job to be there for them, help them through that. And if it's a situation that I need to do something, intercept it somehow, I can. But I think that's a great way in a job to do that. And frankly, I've done it in a lot of things I think we talk about in the workforce, but when I look at like the things that I do at work, they're also the things I do in my life. They're also the things that if things are going on at home, that I'm going to do with my kids to work through a problem or to be available for them. So, I think it's translatable.
I love that. Of course, I've got kids at home as well, and just thinking about the value that actually structured check-ins like that can provide, and part of what I'm hearing there is it can take uh, the burden off of a leader to try and make those moments happen if we just sort of build them in to where it
Right.
becomes part of the conversation. I'm curious, do you feel like having those that model, that framework within Zia engenders more of that kind of sharing between you all outside of those meetings?
Yeah. Do you mean outside of meetings with other people you work with, or just outside of meetings in
But no,
life in
like
general?
in the company
In the
outside of those
company?
actual one spaces.
For
Yeah.
sure. 100%. I think it creates a culture. And I think that's something that's really important at SIA. We have something we call Uber Flex Time. I live in Colorado. If we get a powder day and I don't have to be on something, as long as my work gets done, I could take the day off. We really care about the culture. Um, and I think that that's part of the culture. Part of the culture is you're free to speak your mind, and you're not going to be punished in your job for it, for
Beautiful.
sure. And I think people are willing to take the feedback, because it's not coming at you as criticism. It's coming at you as, you might not know this is how you're showing up for this person, and they're having a really hard time with the way you talk to them, or they need more structure in their job, or whatever it is, because lots of times we don't know what we don't know, right? So it just gives everybody an opportunity to be real.
Yeah, beautiful how structuring in that kind of communication can kind of grease the cultural wheels, so to speak. So it becomes the way that
Yeah.
we more naturally do things without that structure, which is, that's the end all be all there. So,
Yeah.
um, can you share about a time, a turning point in your life when you realized that your way of leading or living was no longer meeting the demands of work and life and you really needed to grow?
Whew, yeah, that is a big one for me. So I had a long career in human services. In 2020, we had COVID happen. And the way the business that I was running worked is we did in-person educational events for parents. So that couldn't happen, right? Schools were not happening. People weren't leaving their house. We couldn't run events that way. So that created a serious turning point where we had to completely change how we did our business. So of course, a lot of that went virtual, but that, we had to really explore what that looks like. In the middle of doing that, which was requiring quite a bit of effort for me, my brother passed away. That was 2 years after my father passed away. I assumed care of my mother, who lived 45 minutes away from me and was getting to a point where she really couldn't be alone anymore. And so here I was, I'm working this job I'm deeply passionate about, but it really wasn't meeting other parts of my life. financially. There were lots of things going on. I tend to be one of those people that isn't motivated by money necessarily. So I'll often do things and then realize, this isn't meeting the whole circle of life for me. Um, and so what ended up happening is that's when I made my shift to working in marketing. And I saw the consistency I had in my life where marketing had actually always been an interest of mine. Weirdly, I did my dissertation was a marketing dissertation in a human development degree. Um, so I moved to a marketing company. I cut my hours in half. I took a small position. It was not a leadership position. It was a position where I could show up, I could do my job, I could leave. It was content related. Show up, write blogs, white papers, post on socials, do your job 15, 20 hours a week. You can go home and take care of your mom. And I needed that in my life at that time. And it was such a gift for me to be able to step back. But I'll tell you what happened is once I got my life back under control, I needed more. And I realized that now that I have things settled, I can't sit in the background. I can't sit here and not do more. I can't be in a place where I don't share what I'm seeing or don't share the ideas I have. And so it was a huge growth time for me, obviously, because I was going through a lot of different transitions. And there were other life things, weirdly enough, that were happening at the exact same time. My kids had premature babies at 22 weeks. She brought them home and was diagnosed with cancer. This was all happening in a very short period of time, in this time that I was transitioning in my job. And so it was a true collision of where is your time going to go as it relates to your family, who you very deeply care about, your mother, who you're taking care of, and your job that you also, as a person who has always been a career person and a leader in life, what are you going to do with it? So I know that's kind of a big story, but boy, there's a lot I could do. A workshop on what I unpacked in that period of time in my life. But what I learned was that I could go to a completely different field, transfer all the things I already knew, learn the skills I had to learn to do the specific job in technology, which I didn't know a lot about enterprise content management. I do now. And I could do all of that. And that doing the simple job was never going to work for me. That I wanted to take the risk. I wanted to be in the conversations that made the difference for the company. And so I moved up to the VP of marketing very, very quickly within a year. So
What a
huge
portal.
transition.
What a massive life portal, trial by fire, as some
Yep.
might say. I'm hearing so much
Yeah.
about, well, first of all, it's apparent through that story and of all that, where you've come to, that there's, of course, so much learning involved. What are the ways that you've grown through all of that?
I think you learn in situations like that what really matters. I've always believed that relationship is what life is actually about. When you lose, I lost three my entire biological family in a 5-year period. And I was worried about losing grandkids and a daughter-in-law. I learned that you can't sacrifice the relationship. And so that was huge for me. And so what that looked like practically is blocking time in my life, having stronger boundaries around what I will and won't do, always being clear about, I want to do a good job in my job, but I'm not going to sign up for everything when I know that I'm just going to be pushing myself to that place where I am frazzled, stressed, and maybe not showing up for the people in my life when I'm not at work, even when I'm with them. So that was probably the biggest thing that I would say that I've learned is time in. You can't replace time in. You have to have it.
That is certainly my experience. The gift that the dying gift to the living is a realization of just how precious life
Hmm.
really is.
Yeah,
I love how
100%.
in your answer there you already went to a little bit my next question, ways of taking care of yourself in embedded in the answer of growth, because of course growth requires that commitment. It asks us to take agency.
Yeah.
in our own growth. I'm curious, what's been the most valuable investment that you've made in yourself for your own growth, personally, professionally, over
Yeah.
the last
Yeah.
several years?
Boy, I could take that answer so many different directions because I've been in therapy since I was a teenager. I have done tons of like leadership trainings, coaching. My PhD was I came from a pretty dysfunctional family, and so I was drawn into human development because my very first class, the person said, "We're going to talk about why some kids make it and some kids don't, regardless of the circumstances." And I saw myself as a kid that made it regardless of the circumstances. I wanted the answer very badly. And so that really became my therapy, so to speak. I also learned a lot, obviously, going through an entire master's and PhD program, but it's my therapy. Now I would say that with all of that, with all the tools, the skills, the leadership trainings, the education, all that stuff, the things that I do to take care of myself are really honoring what I know, sharing what I know, being the mentor that other people got to be, that I got to have in other people. Um, I kind of laugh at the term self care anymore because self care implies like go get a massage, go do a yoga retreat, and you know, I think it's self compassion more than it's self care. I think self care looks more like walking in the woods with my dog. I do that almost every day because I have a 2 mile trail outside my backyard, and it's good for them. It's good for me. They've shown in studies that being in nature removes stress. There's so many good reasons to do that, but it's the simple things. And I think that's probably where the biggest growth has come for me is that to kind of bring it back to your original question, it's not the massage and the yoga retreat. It's the simple things and it's the consistent things that I know are there for me no matter what. Getting on my bike every day. I ride my bike almost every day. It's the simple stuff.
Interesting, and I'll just sort of like tie this back to one of your earlier responses too. We're talking about structuring in conversations so that they just become the way that you do things at work. Equally, the way that commitments, practices become the way that we walk through the world, and equally, I think like that term self care. It's sort of like, so I'm self caring when I'm not self destructing. Like what,
Right.
Like, can
Exactly.
it all be,
Exactly.
can everything I do be self care in a way?
Right.
Like having fun is self care. Working is self care. But
Yeah,
what's the way
exactly.
that I'm showing up to do all those things? So I really appreciate that. What's your vision for your leadership, your legacy, the impact that you want to have in the years ahead?
Mm. I want this move has been a big one for me because it is a totally different field. Marketing, I understood, but technology and enterprise content management, the big boom of AI, and the fact that we shifted from enterprise content management to intelligent content management, and what does that look like, and how do we place ourselves in that world, which feels a lot like the .com boom or different housing booms, all the different things we've had. I want to contribute to that. I want to continue to grow in that. I want the people that I work with to know who I am, to know that I will show up for them, and that if I don't, I want them to know they better tell me I'm not. That's how I want to show up in the world. On a bigger scale, I stick with my Parenting Well podcast because I absolutely love having conversations with people and learning what they do in their life and how they parent their kids and take care of themselves, all those kind of really cool human things. I would like to, continue to do that and continue to have fun merging these two worlds that I have. Mostly, I really want to show up for other people the way people have shown up for me. I would say that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Hmm, I love that. What are the ways that you feel most stretched or challenged right now? The ways that life leadership is asking you to grow currently?
Mm. Yeah, some of that is a little bit baked into what I just shared, that I'm learning a whole different industry, and that does push me. I have to. I there's this part of me that I have to admit it. I could have been a lifelong student. I loved going to school. Like I was never one of those people that I was raising kids during that time. I would finish putting my kids to bed at 8 o'clock and start my homework and do homework till 1 and be fine with it. I was younger and I could handle the 6 hours of sleep that I can't handle that one anymore. I need, 7 or 8. but, but it is a lot to take that on. It does push me, but it's hard for me to say pushes me because it feels negative. It pushes me in a positive way, you know? Um, I also think that, the gift of growth and self-discovery is more self-discovery. And when I say that, what I mean is that when you open that door, you start wanting more of that. And so, those things push me when I recognize things in my life that I need to look at, or maybe don't want to admit about myself or whatever, that it's time to address another new thing. I guess what I'm getting to is the journey never ends. You're still going to be doing that. You're always going to get pushed, and the journey never ends. So, those are the things that push me. Yeah, I think through yeah, there's a lot.
I'm curious to go a little deeper here, just because it's really inspiring, of course. Anytime that you hear somebody making it like a major life transition, going from doing one thing to going to doing something really totally new. In along the lines of this, growth through being stretched and learning new things. What have you learned about yourself, that insight, that self-knowledge that has come through experiences like that, like trying something so brand new
Hmm.
at a time when you were already really comfortable in something else?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I learned is that I really like that. I like the energy of something new. The other thing I will say is it was really hard for me. I'll give you an example. I went to a conference where they brought just the leadership team in with one of our major partners. So I am surrounded by people who are saying what I could have said about my last career. You know, 20 when we're doing our introductions. I have 25 years in the industry and I've done da, 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 and worked for these companies and all of that, right? And then it gets to me, and here I am, I'm VP of marketing. And I'm like, hi, I'm Shelly Mahon. I've been here 5 years. It was an awkward moment for me. And I realized like I needed to know how to sell Shelly Mann, and it had nothing to do with how long I was in that position. And I didn't need to be embarrassed or afraid to say that out loud. I needed to explain, not in the here's my 30 years of experience, 20 years of experience in places I've worked, but in the here's what I bring to the table, because this is who I am and this is what I know. And that was hard for me. And it gets back to that ego piece. I didn't even realize that was an ego thing for me. But man, when I did, I was like, wow, it really bothers me to not be able to say I'm a hugely seasoned professional in this field. Yeah. So now I just structure the conversation differently. I merge it with other things I've done in my life instead of talking about where I've worked.
Yeah, and it seems like such a critical evolution of what value, like what we feel like is actually valuable too. Like,
Yeah.
is it the role? Is it the amount of time? It, here I am showing up to the table, and regardless of whether my experience is in this industry or not, I've got 3 decades of experience in
Yeah.
life, and really embodying the and owning the value
Yeah.
of is what I hear in that.
Yeah. Life and leadership, right? Leadership is leadership. And yeah, I would agree.
So this last question is a little bit more of an invitation. I want to give you the time and the space here to offer to our listeners whatever it is that's most in your mind and heart to share right now. Take your time. The floor is yours.
Yeah. I think that I would say that being a good leader takes a lot of self discovery, a lot of listening, paying attention to the little things. And we can't as a leader, you can't get stuck around the axle, turned around the axle. I'm not sure what the right figure of speech is there. You have to be willing to take the risk. Whether you're talking about a big career shift like I was just sharing, or you're talking about a situation at work, I feel like leadership always kind of embodies this risk and protection balance, right? If you don't take the big risk, if we don't go open this AI company that we're branching out on, well, then we're not going to reap the rewards of that. And it's true when you're a leader in most things. If you don't take the risk to do the things you're afraid of, then you're not going to reap the rewards of those things. And I would also say that I personally believe getting a mentor and having multiple mentors is an incredibly valuable thing. And you need those people in your life that you can say, I want you to tell me the truth. I don't want you to say things to me to make me feel good. I want you to tell me the truth. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? How can I grow? I just think that's such an important thing to have in your life. But I'd say don't be afraid, man. If you want to go after something in life, go after it. Like, I had no business stepping into a VP of marketing role immediately, but I did because I went after it. And I think if you really want something, if you really want it, that the floor is yours, that the world is your oyster, as they say. You can go get it. You just have to be willing to ask for the help that you need and show up, right?
Well, Shelly, I so appreciate the wisdom that you've shared here today with me. I've really gotten so much out of it. And I'm sure that whoever else listens in is going to equally benefit from what you've shared here today. Thank you so much for being my guest on the True Leadership Podcast.
Thank you. It was truly a pleasure.
That's it for this episode of the True Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by One Mountain Leadership, where we help leaders grow the capacity, confidence, and presence of true leadership through the True Leadership approach. To learn more about the approach, our offerings, our community, and how we can help you realize your potential in both leadership and in life, visit us at onemountainleadership.com.